Hi BookTube, it's Amy. I'm here for the first time in about a month, I think it's been, for my Friday reads. And I'm here in the corner at my new desk. Let me just tilt this camera so you can have a look. So that is the desk, and it's just fairly inexpensive pressed wood thing, but I quite like it. It's got a couple of drawers here that pull out quite nicely, and I finally have a spot for my laptop instead of on the footstool by my chair. So I thought I would just film here in this corner tonight because all the books that I've read recently and that are in progress were conveniently sitting on this desk here. So as you might know, I'm in the middle of reading Ulysses, and by in the middle, not quite in the middle. I am 75 pages into Ulysses by James Joyce. And as you can see, I have quite a ways to go, so I think this will probably count as my mammoth for March of the Mammoths, because there's no way I'm finishing this before March. Now, this is not something I'm rushing through, this is not something I'm reading all in one go. Just as I approached Proust, I'm approaching Ulysses, and I'm reading bit by bit when I feel like it. Now, I found an audiobook of Ulysses on YouTube that I've quite enjoyed the narration on, and so I've been hitting play on that chapter by chapter, opening up the book, and sitting in my chair and just sort of reading along here. Now, I talked a little bit about this particular edition. It's the Penguin Modern Classics edition, and it's the student edition. I talked a bit about this in my video from about a week or two ago when I was just sitting in my chair. And I had said that I hoped there would be a significant amount of notes. Unfortunately, there aren't really. As far as I could tell, I didn't come across any notes in here. Who knows, they could be hidden and look like part of the text. But I've got a teeny tiny afterword, and there's a teeny tiny introduction of a page or two. So because of that, I picked up a reading guide to go with it, and I'm just realizing that I left the reading guide in my bedroom, so I won't show that to you now. You'll have to take my word that it exists, but I do have a reading guide to help me through that. I'm enjoying it so far. I don't think I really have a lot to say about it so far. It's a book that I think is less about plot and more about the experience of reading it. It's definitely an auditory experience. It's something you either have to hear aloud or hear in your own head as you're reading. So we'll see how far I get with that in the coming week. I also read recently Ruby Fruit Jungle. I posted a video about this on Tuesday evening, I believe. Greatly enjoyed this one. Check out my video on this if you're interested of my thoughts about it. Then I had my worst read of the year so far. I read Washington Square by Henry James at the pub last night. Wasn't too thrilled by this. It was boring. All the characters just made me feel icky and depressed. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why Henry James was telling this story. It's essentially the story of a young woman at first. She's young at the start of the novel when she meets her love interest. A young woman who is the daughter of a widowed doctor. Now, the widowed doctor is some sort of strange narcissist who doesn't believe anyone could actually love his daughter for who she is because she's not very beautiful, and he believes that any man who would propose to her is only interested in her money. And so when his daughter falls in love with an attractive young man and says that she's going to marry him, he forbids it and threatens to disinherit her. So he's a very cynical character. She herself is not very interesting. She is boring, she is perhaps a bit naive, and she ends up a very cynical person. And then you have her meddling aunt, who is not a very likable woman either. And it's just a story that I didn't like, and I couldn't get invested in it, and the writing wasn't enough to redeem the plot. And it's interesting because I really did enjoy The Portrait of a Lady by James. Although, to be honest, I do see echoes of this novel in Portrait of a Lady. So they do have similar themes, but in Portrait of a Lady, at least our disenchanted young woman is interesting. In this novel, the young woman was not interesting, and I think I'm going to drop this into the little free library a couple blocks from here and dispose of it from my personal library, because it's definitely not something I want to read again. Today I started reading The Warden by Trollope. I'm loving this one so far. So it is the first of the Barchester novels, and it's focused in Barchester. We have the warden, who is given this position as the caretaker, so to speak, of they refer to it as a hospital, but I get the impression that it's sort of a retirement home for these men. So several centuries before, a resident of this city left a sum of money in a trust to take care of 12 men who were in later age, so not able to work anymore, but who were impoverished. And as the years have gone by, these men continue to get the same or a similar sum of money, which allows them to have a bit of spending money. Their room and board are free, they get meals, and so it's a pretty decent life. But the interest of this trust has grown quite a bit, because the land included in it has gone from farmland to a bustling city with houses and property. And so the warden, the caretaker of this trust, of these men, gets the remaining profits. And it started out as a very small sum, but now at the opening of this novel, it has gotten to the point where it is £800 a year. And so it makes the warden extremely wealthy, and he's been collecting this income for over a decade. The members of the church who appointed him to this position have assured him that it's fine, they're doing everything in accordance with the will and the rules of this trust, but a local doctor takes it into his mind that these 12 men who are being taken care of are not getting their due, and that the warden really shouldn't be getting so much money, so much income from this trust. And so he has rounded up these men and convinced them that they should each be getting £100 a year, which that doesn't quite work out when you think about it. If the warden is getting £800 and there's 12 of them, and they're demanding that each get £100. Well, that comes to £1,200, and on top of that, you've got the money that you would assume would be needed to run this hospital/house where they live and to provide the food and whatnot. So perhaps the finances don't quite work out there, but they are convinced that they deserve £100 a year and that they should be gentlemen. And so we have this conflict opening up the novel, and to make matters worse, the doctor who is causing this mischief is actually in love with the warden's daughter. So I'm quite enjoying this so far, and Trollop has a great storytelling style. So I'm quite enjoying that as well. So I've got one more book here, something that I may start this weekend or in the coming week. And it's going to be as big a surprise to you as it is to me, because I've never heard of this author. I've never heard of the book, but I was in the book bazaar while I was having some after work desserts with a friend of mine at Thimble Cakes. And I popped in there and bought this on site. It is a autobiography called The Passionate Years by Caress Crosby. I've never heard of her. I didn't look her up. I don't want to look her up. I would rather be surprised. It's often fun just to jump into a autobiography or a memoir by someone that you've never heard of and just see who they were and where it takes you, with no preconceived notions about the author. But the back quite intrigues me, as does the edition. It's a Penguin edition, I believe, as I can tell by this penguin on the back, but it also says the Echo Press out of New York, and it's part of the Neglected Books of the 20th Century series. It's a mad, amusing, and revealing look at Paris in the 20s and at the people Caress Crosby knew: Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Edith Wharton, James Joyce, Picasso, Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, Lawrence of Arabia, and a host of others. In a single day, a visitor to the Crosby home outside of Paris might have found Salvador Dali at work in one room, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. playfully swinging from the rafters, and D.H. Lawrence sunning himself by the pool. In her autobiography, Mrs. Crosby has added a valuable footnote to the literary history of our time. She tells some amazingly good stories. Her account of Lindenberg's arrival in Paris is a superb piece of straight reporting, and her description of a Quatre Arts ball at which she won first prize for reasons that cannot be mentioned in the family newspaper is funny and sad at the same time. Her fostering of unknown or otherwise unpublishable writers, Crane, Joyce, D.H. Lawrence, among others, through the Black Sun Press can now be seen clearly for the important project it was. That's a quote from the New York Times. So it sounds like quite the book, and I have a bit of a track record of enjoying literary autobiographies. A couple years back, I picked up the autobiography of, was it an autobiography or a biography? I think it was an autobiography of Simone Signoret, who I'd never heard of. I guess she was a French actress, and I quite enjoyed that. And so this one caught my eye. So I'll find out who Caress Crosby was and how she came to be involved with all these famous writers and authors mentioned on the back here. So that's what I'm up to. That's my reading. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these, if you've heard of Caress Crosby, and what you plan to be reading this weekend. I hope you have a lovely one.